finally, after 5 months of eating a high carbohydrate and low fat diet, I have some blood test results to share, and so that is what we're doing today. I'm going to share them with you. If you've not been here before, my name is Sue, and I ate a carnivore diet for 3.5 years, and then 5 months ago I switched to a high carbohydrate, low fat diet. The reason for doing that I shared in a video which I will link to here. I will also put that at the end of the video if you want to go and watch that. But basically, I was worried about my metabolic health. My blood test results were showing that things may have been going in the wrong direction. I wasn't losing weight, and I was just getting really frustrated, and so I decided to do something different. Now, I did a video, not the last video I made, I think the one before, where I did an update with my diet and what was happening. And in there I shared that I'd made a mistake when I had my last lot of blood tests done, which was August 2025. So last year. It's now March 2026 at the time of recording this video, where I had a lipid panel done, and I had a fasting glucose and a fasting insulin. Now, I'm not sure exactly what happened. I think it was just everything that I'd been looking at, kind of things got a bit muddled in my head probably, and I basically forgot that I'd had the lipid panel done. I think because it takes about a week for the insulin results to come back. The rest of them come back really quickly, but the insulin usually takes about a week. I think in that time I'd probably been digging into all sorts of information. And when I got my insulin results, I worked out my HOMA-IR, which I hadn't done before, and just kind of thought, oh, everything's just going in the wrong direction. My HOMA-IR was that I got back then was 4.16, which is severely insulin resistant. And so that was when I started really thinking seriously about changing my diet, and then in October I changed my diet. Now, I made that mistake back then. I also realised today that I actually made a mistake with my HOMA-IR, and it wasn't 4.16, it was 3.09, I think. I do have it here somewhere. I've got a spreadsheet here with everything on it. So let me see. HOMA-IR was 3.6 last year, so it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was, but still a problem. But if I had kind of thought about the results that I had with my triglycerides, I would have realised that I probably didn't have lipotoxicity like I thought that I did, and that things may not have been quite as bad as I thought that they were either. So, but that's fine. I am not unhappy that I did this experiment at all. I've had a lot of learning from this, and a lot of changes kind of in my body that have been interesting. The way that my body has managed glucose and everything, I've been quite happy with, and also the way that my bowel has changed, because if you've been following my journey, you know, but if you haven't, I have a whole pile of videos through my carnivore journey talking about the chronic diarrhea that I have had off and on for decades, and that got worse on carnivore and never really went away. It was still off and on right up until the time I changed my diet in October. But since I've changed my diet, I've had zero diarrhea. So that for me has been a great learning, because it really makes me realise that my digestive system tends to be a lot happier with at least some fibre in there. I suspected that through carnivore. I always found that the diarrhea was better and more manageable when I was having some fibre, you know, if I was having some blueberries or whatever, but this has really kind of made me realise that I think that having some fibre is probably quite important for me, at least now. In the future, who knows? I think very much that my body is still healing, obviously, and so, you know, I don't know what it'll be like, you know, 2, 3, 5 years down the track, but right now I think that fibre is fairly important for me. So let's get stuck in and have a look at these blood test results, and I'll tell you what tests I had done and what the results were. If you're looking for simple, no-nonsense supplements, one company I often recommend is Bulk Supplements. What I really like about them is that they sell single ingredient supplements in pure powdered form without a lot of unnecessary fillers, encapsulating aids, or the other stuff that is so often found in most supplements. That makes it really easy to control exactly what you're taking and how much. Bulk Supplements also provide third-party testing and certificates of analysis, so you can actually see the purity of what you're buying, which is something that I personally care a lot about. And because everything comes in bulk packaging, the price per serving is usually way lower than most capsule supplements or competing brands. If you'd like to check them out, I've put a link in the description below. Now let's get back to the video. So the tests that I had done were a lipid panel, because I really wanted the triglycerides and the HDL out of that. I had an HbA1c, so that I know what my average blood glucose has been over the last 3 months. I had a fasting glucose and a fasting insulin test done, and I had an ALT done as well. So that's alanine transferase, I think it is. It's a liver enzyme, a liver marker. And the reason for choosing those tests was that affordability, for a start. I would have liked to have had more done, but just can't do it. But those tests allow me to get a snapshot and see where my body's at, how it's handling the carbs, how it compares to previous tests on carnivore, and then I can kind of make a decision about where I'm going from here on in, because honestly, I've been missing the carnivore diet. I've been missing the red meat. I mean, when I changed my diet, I had some people going, oh, you just want to eat carbohydrates and you're just a quitter and, you just don't want it. And it's like, no, actually. I actually really enjoy eating a carnivore diet. I enjoy eating the meat. I enjoy the satiety. And, like having the carbs initially, it was like, oh, yeah, kind of. But it's been good because it's been over summer and there's been lots of watermelon and all that sort of stuff. But, it's not, I actually prefer eating a carnivore or ketovore style diet. So let's have a look at the blood test results. All right. So I told you what I'd had done. And so let's have a look. Now, the last lot of tests I had done, as I think I've already said, was in August last year. And my blood glucose, my fasting glucose at that time was 6.7 millimoles per litre, which converts to, make sure I get on the right sheet because I keep wanting to look at the wrong ones. That converts to 120. So that was in August last year. That was on the carnivore diet. My blood glucose, fasting glucose, in my test this week, it was done a few days ago, was 5.7. So that's 102. So there's an improvement there in my fasting glucose, which I knew that there was because my fasting glucose has generally been better than it was prior to changing my diet. That was one of my concerns, was my fasting glucose had been going up. And so I was happy to see it come back down again. When I first changed my diet, it was all over the place, as you can imagine. I've spoken about that in my update videos, but it has been gradually getting better. Now, my triglycerides in August last year, so I'll come back to my insulin, I'll do that one last. So my triglycerides in August last year was 0.6, and this week they were 1.1, so they've gone up slightly. Now, apparently that's to be expected when you're eating carbohydrates. It's not a huge amount. Wouldn't really be a concern, like I'm not concerned about it. But yeah, there has been a little bit of a rise there. And then my HDL, so I'll convert those for you and I'll pop them up on the screen. So the 0.6 in August last year was 53, and then the 1.1 this week is 97. Okay. Now my HDL in August last year was 1.7, so higher HDL is good and lower is not so good. This week it was 1.64, so it's gone down very slight. It's gone down about it's at 0.6, and if I convert those numbers, that is 65 in August and then 63 today. This week. So it's gone down a little bit, and that makes my ratio. So I think I've got that on the spreadsheet here somewhere. So the triglyceride to HDL ratio. This is something I didn't realize, that it's actually different depending on whether you're working in millimoles or milligrams per deciliter. So, and in past videos, I've said that my triglycerides were 0.35, but that's in the millimoles per deciliter measurement ratio, conversion, whatever you want to call it. So August last year, going by New Zealand numbers, it was 0.35. Going by US numbers in milligrams, it was 0.8. And then this week it was 0.67 going by New Zealand numbers, and 1.53 going by the American milligrams per deciliter ratio. So the ratio has got a little bit worse, I guess, is what you would say. It's not as good as it was last year. But then, as I said, eating carbs, your triglycerides normally go up a little bit, so apparently. So that wouldn't be something that I would be concerned about, but it does provide some information for me, which I'll talk about shortly. Now, my total cholesterol went down, which is kind of what I expected. That's what happens often when you eat carbs. That went down, and my there was something here that I was going to share. All right, so that's what I was going to share. So those ratios for the triglycerides to HDL in the milligrams per deciliter. So as I said, mine was 1.54 in the milligrams per deciliter for this latest test. And I'll pop the interpretations and the ranges up on the screen so that you can see. So as you can see, with the milligrams per deciliter, under 2 is excellent, 2 to 3 is very good. So I'm still coming in that excellent range there. And then in the New Zealand values, or the millimoles per litre values, under 0.5 is excellent. So I'm 0.81. No, yeah, 0.81. So I'm in the next one, which is very good. So in the New Zealand one, I'm very good. In the milligrams per deciliter, I'm still in that excellent category. So it depends on who you're listening to and who you're looking at, which numbers, which labs you go to. But still pretty good. Okay. Now, I'll talk about my home IR shortly. HbA1c. Now I'll put the values up on the screen here so you can see them. So my HbA1c, the last time I had that tested was September 2023. So that was quite a while ago. I'd been on carnivore at that stage for about a year and a half, 18 months. And my HbA1c was 35 at that time. My HbA1c this week was 33. So my HbA1c is actually lower than it was the last time it was tested on carnivore. And with the way my blood glucose has been, that actually doesn't really surprise me. Although I was a little bit worried about these tests, I was kind of thinking that things might not be as good as I thought that they were going to be, but it proved me wrong. So as you can see on here, HbA1c under between 31 and 41 is good. It's a low risk of diabetes, and that's kind of where I'm sitting in both of those tests. So that hasn't changed too much. Now my ALT, the liver enzymes, that is something that has changed. Apparently it's not enough to worry about too much, but my last test was in April 2024 and it came in at 29. This one came in at 38, so that's a bit of a jump up there. I'll put the ranges here on the screen as well for this. And as you can see, 30 to 45 it says it's borderline, slightly above optimal, so you should monitor it. So I will have that test done again, probably in this year when I do some more tests. But in the Common Sense Labs book, it says that normal is 0 to 44 and optimal is 10 to 26. So it's not something that I worry about too much, but as I said, I will monitor it and see, because I don't know whether it's gone up and back down again because it's been a while since it was tested last, or whether it was going up on this higher carbohydrate diet. I'm sure a lot of people in the keto and low carb space will say it was probably going up, but we really don't know, unless if I was to stay on this diet and then test again in a couple of months, then we would know, but I don't know that that's going to be the case. All right, so that's my ALT, HbA1c, and then did I share my glucose results? I'm not sure if I did or not, but my glucose results were my fasting glucose. Okay, so my fasting glucose in August last year was 6.7 or 120.6 milligrams per deciliter. I think I did share this already. And then this week was 5.7 or 102. So that's come down. And then my fasting insulin last August was 84 or 12.09. And this week my fasting insulin was 10.9, so still too high, but lower than it was last time. So that means that my HOMA-IR last time was 3.6. As I said, I thought it was higher, but it wasn't. I think I must have had stuffed something up when I was converting things last time. It gets very confusing trying to convert things for my videos. So it was 3.6 last time, and it was 2.77 this time. Okay, so as you'll see on the screen, I have the ranges for the HOMA-IR. Under 1 is excellent, so that's very high insulin sensitivity. 1 to 1.5 is healthy. 1.5 to 2 is acceptable, but monitor trends. And then 2 to 2.9, early signs of insulin resistance. And then over 3 or equal to 3 is a high likelihood of insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. So that's where I was last August. Now I'm in that next category down, which is just early signs of insulin resistance. So I'm pretty happy with that, pretty happy with the way that that's gone. And I mean, this was one of the reasons that I wanted to make this change, was to see if I could get my body into a better metabolic state by eating this way, and it's showing that I actually can. And I haven't been super strict over the last probably month or 6 weeks. I was being very strict for about the first 3 months or so, and really keeping my fat under 30 grams a day, and but I've kind of been a bit all over the place and not tracking enough over the last 6 weeks or so. So things may have gone up a little bit again. I don't really know, although my blood glucose generally after my meals has been good. My fasting glucose in the morning has changed a little bit, and I spoke about that in my last video. So my thoughts with this is that my lab test results show that my body is functioning okay on both fuels. And you know, there's not a huge difference between the two of them, but my metabolic markers, you know, my blood glucose and insulin and that have gone down since eating this way. So I can do both, but with my triglycerides and my HDL changing and that ratio changing, that kind of indicates that my body probably does a little bit better on the low carb stuff. And that's what I feel, that's what my instinct is as well, is that my body does better on a mostly low carb diet. And so that's my plan, is to go back to closer to probably a ketogenic diet with a lot more red meat again, and but keeping some plants in there, and low carb plants, and which I was doing off and on before anyway. But the thing that I will change is that I am not going to add any fat to my meat. I'm going to be eating leaner cuts of meat, and not adding any butter or anything, but on carnivore, a lot of the time I was adding butter and stuff to my food. I went through phases where I didn't, and then phases where I did. And when I look back, because I've recorded quite a lot of information over the especially the last couple of years, and when I look back at my blood test results, so I haven't had lots of them done, but I have had some done, and putting them into the spreadsheet yesterday and today was really helpful. So what I discovered looking at them is that back in April 2025, so last year, was the best blood glucose and insulin results that I've had. So my fasting glucose came in at 5.3 back then, and my insulin came in at 60. So I'll convert those for you. So yeah, fasting glucose was 95, and then the insulin was 8.6. And I remember when I got that test done and looking at the result, and I was so happy because I was almost in the good range. So good is under 8, and then optimal is under 5 with the insulin. And so I was like, yes. And then it just went up again, and every time I've had it tested, apart from that time, it's been higher. Now, it has been, my insulin has been up as high as 15, which was in April the year before, 2024, after doing a high-fat carnivore diet. Now, I've spoken about this in my videos, and because a lot of people were like, well, when I did a video about this. But what had happened was I had had my glucose and fasting insulin tested before starting on the high-fat carnivore diet, and they came in at 104 and 10.9. And then I was eating an 80-20 or even 90-10 fat to protein ratio carnivore diet for about 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And then I went and got another test done. and it came in, so that was in February, and then the second test was in April. So yeah, it was about 6 weeks. And my glucose was 113 versus 104, and my insulin was 15.1 versus 10.9. So that was quite a big change. And at the time, it confused me. If the video is there, I'll try and remember to link to it here. I was really confused about that, why that had happened. And people were telling me that shouldn't happen, that can't happen, blah, 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 blah. But it can, and it does. And I'm not the only one that it happens to, I have discovered. So in April last year, when my insulin and my fasting glucose were the lowest that they've been when I've had them tested, and my HOMA-IR was, let me see what that was, HOMA-IR was 2. So my HOMA-IR was 2 at that stage, which is just about normal, good range, I think. Is it? Hang on, HOMA-IR, scroll up. HOMA-IR is in the good range, okay? So it's not very good or excellent, but it's in the good range. And that's where I was in April last year. Now, when I go back and look in Carb Manager and look in my notes that I've been keeping a spreadsheet with regards to my weight and all the stuff that was going on with my gut and everything else. When I look back there, what I was doing was I was eating a low-fat carnivore diet. So I was eating about 60-40, sometimes even 55-45. I was eating breakfast and lunch and skipping dinner. And so I was adding no fat to anything, just kind of eating lean meats and probably a bit of sauerkraut and stuff. So that was actually working for me. And so it's become clearer and clearer and clearer to me that fat is an issue for me and I need to keep that down. So that's why my plan is to go back to a ketovore diet, but I will not be adding any fat. I'll be sticking often with, still some fish and just leaner cuts of red meat and things like that. If I need to use fat to cook in, I'm going to use olive oil because I have genetics NIPs that don't necessarily do great with saturated fat. I don't have the really bad one. There is one that can be really a real problem, but I do have others. And so I kind of suspect that's some of what's been going on. And then, that whole, the lipotoxicity thing, I think can be, there's different variations, I guess. And so when you've got body fat on you, your fat cells can be leaking fat into your bloodstream, and then that messes up the way insulin works and everything. And that's obviously what's been going on. So my plan is to do ketovore. I'll probably do some PSMF days, 1 or 2 of those a week maybe. I do plan to stick to probably under about 20 grams of carbs a day most days, but I'm going to do some higher carb and lower fat days. So I may do 1 day every couple of weeks or a couple of days a month, something like that, just to keep that kind of metabolic flexibility. And I'm going to see how that all goes. And I think that's what my entire plan was. I've got a feeling I'm actually forgetting something. I've got it all kind of typed out here. So yeah, that's it. So yeah, the other thing is I'm wondering if my body will respond better after having this change. Like, it's just because my body always seems to adapt to things, and always has done, adapts quite quickly to things. And so I'm wondering if after having the switch to carbs and learning to use carbs again, if when I drop the carbs, if I'll get more of a weight loss kind of result after that. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think that part of the reason that it's taken me so long to kind of work this out, because I'm thinking, God, I must be slow or something, because it's taken me like nearly 4 years to work out what the problem is. But but then I was thinking about it, and I was looking through my notes on Excel and everything, and I realized that, the reason it's taken so long is because so much of my focus was on my gut health, what was going on with my bowel. It's all been really confusing. And so when I look back through my notes, like even back in April last year, when these blood tests came in really good and my diet had been, fairly low fat, sticking to kind of that 60-40 range, I didn't really click back then because my bowel was really playing up, because I'd been taking berberine again, and so I'd gone back to having diarrhea. And when the diarrhea becomes a problem, that's where my focus goes, is how do I stop this? How do I manage this? And so the weight loss side of things and the blood glucose and everything, blood glucose net goes a bit haywire because, you know, my stress levels are up. And so it's been a really difficult kind of picture and difficult bunch of symptoms to kind of manage. But because things are so much better with my bowel, I'm hopeful now that I can get things sorted out. And so for me right now, my bowel is key. Okay, so and this is why I'm going to do what I'm doing with keeping some carbs in, and probably doing some higher carb days where I'm eating a bit more fibre. I'll probably keep taking psyllium even for a little while, because I've been taking psyllium, just to keep my bowel happy. And hopefully if I can keep my bowel happy, then I can get all the rest of the things sorted out. And I probably will go back to 2 meals a day as well, because I've been eating 3 meals a day through this change. I'll probably drop out lunch initially and do breakfast and dinner. I think it's important for me to keep eating breakfast. And then I might do some days where I do breakfast and lunch, and then some days where I do breakfast and dinner. But I'll see. So that's where I'm at. That's my blood test results. I'm super happy with the changes that happened, just because of the learning, you know, just the realizations that I have about the way my body's functioning, the confirmation of what's actually going on, is a really good thing. So yeah, so if you have any comments or questions, pop those below. Make sure to like the video if you like it. That helps other people to see this. I know that there are other people out there who are struggling with similar things to what I've been struggling with, and so if this is you, then yeah, if you've got any questions, fire away and I'll get to those as soon as I can. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you again another day.